The cold air rule. A practice our grandparents followed that quietly protected homes and bodies. You see, before the days of modern HVAC systems, dehumidifiers, air purifiers and smart thermostats, those living in cold climates adhered to a simple household rule, one that was followed without debate. This rule was handed down quietly, practiced daily and rarely written about. It was all about controlled cold air ventilation during the winter months. Now, it wasn't about comfort. No, it was about keeping houses dry, lungs clear, food preserved, and heating costs survivable. This single practice shaped how homes were built, how families slept, and indeed how winter sickness was kept at bay for generations. So, cold air was deliberately allowed in every winter day. In pre-central heating households across Europe, North America and cold regions of Asia, homes were never sealed shut in winter. Oh no, windows were cracked, vents were opened, doors were briefly opened daily, and air exchange was intentional. This wasn't just accidental heat loss, mind you, it was scheduled ventilation. Cold, dry outdoor air was allowed to replace the warm, moisture-heavy indoor air. The goal here was dryness, not warmth. Moisture, you see, was the enemy. Warm indoor air, trapped by fires, stoves, bodies, cooking and washing, produced condensation on walls, bedding and wooden beams. Without air exchange, that moisture fed mould, rot and respiratory illness. Our grandparents understood that a cold house was survivable, but a damp one was dangerous. In practice, this meant opening windows for 5 to 15 minutes, once or twice daily, even during freezing weather. Oh, the stove stayed hot, of course. The walls cooled briefly, the air dried rapidly, and then everything was closed again. The heat returned faster than the moisture ever could. Mold prevention was, really the primary reason, not comfort. Mold is not a modern problem. It destroyed homes long before drywall even existed. Historical records from monasteries, military barracks and farmhouses show a constant concern over rot and dampness. The solution was always airflow combined with cold air. Cold air, it holds less moisture than warm air. When cold air enters a warm space, it absorbs moisture rapidly and carries it out when expelled. This is exactly why old homes had things like transom windows, wall vents, chimney flues and draft paths that were, honestly, never fully sealed. Mould simply does not thrive in cold, dry environments. By flushing indoor air daily, our grandparents prevented black mould mildew and wood decay, all without chemicals, sprays or machines. Today, modern winter homes, they trap humidity. Showers, cooking and even breathing raise indoor moisture levels, while sealed windows prevent escape. This is why mould appears, sometimes even in new houses. Applying the cold air rule today means deliberately venting moisture sources. After cooking, crack a window. After showers, vent the bathroom aggressively, even in freezing temperatures. And do not rely solely on exhaust fans that honestly just recirculate poorly. Respiratory health improved because indoor air stayed clean. Winter coughs were once blamed on cold air itself. In reality, stagnant indoor air was the problem. Old households understood that stale air caused chest tightness, lingering coughs, and what was once called winter lung. Fresh, cold air reduced airborne pathogens, smoke build-up, and damp bedding that irritated airways. Bedrooms were especially important. Sleeping rooms were often kept colder than living areas. Windows were cracked overnight, even in snow. Heavy bedding compensated for air temperature, while lungs benefited from clean, dry air. This practice reduced nighttime coughing, sinus congestion, and mold exposure. Applying this today means lowering bedroom temperatures and allowing fresh air circulation. Even opening a window slightly for 10 minutes before bed and again in the morning can significantly reduce condensation on walls and mattresses. Mattresses should be aired weekly by uncovering them during cold daylight hours to release trapped moisture. You know, heating efficiency actually improved instead of getting worse. Modern thinking often suggests that opening windows just wastes heat, but historically people notice quite the opposite. Damp air, interestingly enough, feels colder than dry air. Moisture increases heat loss through evaporation from both your skin and the walls around you. When the indoor air stayed dry, folks genuinely felt warmer, even at lower temperatures. Fireplaces and stoves, as it turns out, also work more efficiently in dry air. Moist air tends to absorb heat energy without really raising the temperature, which forces fires to work a lot harder. By purging moisture from the home every day, houses would heat up faster and actually retain warmth longer once the windows were closed. Even today, this principle still holds true. It's better to vent briefly and aggressively rather than leaving small leaks open all day long. Just 5 minutes of wide-open ventilation dries a house much faster than hours of barely cracked windows. Afterward, close everything up and let your heating systems work with dry air. Older homes. They were designed for breathing. Attics were vented, you see. Crawl spaces allowed airflow, and walls, well, they were not vapour-sealed. Chimneys created a constant upward draft, pulling stale air out naturally. Even doors and windows, they leaked intentionally. This meant air moved, even when folks didn't think about it. The cold air rule, it was built right into the architecture. But modern houses, they removed this feature, replacing it with airtight shells that require mechanical ventilation to avoid problems. Now, applying historical design principles today means restoring airflow intentionally. Use passive vents in bathrooms and kitchens, for instance. Ensure attic ventilation is functional in winter, not blocked. Avoid sealing homes so tightly that moisture accumulates. And remember, if you insulate heavily, ventilation becomes non-negotiable. Instead of, overheating living spaces, grandparents dressed for winter indoors. Wool layers, felt slippers, thick socks, and insulated nightwear allowed rooms to stay cooler. Bedding really did the heavy lifting at night. Feather beds, layered blankets, and elevated bed frames reduced heat loss while still allowing air movement beneath. This actually reduced the need to trap warm air indoors. Cold air circulation was perfectly compatible with warmth because insulation was worn, not forced into the room. The cold air rule wasn't just occasional, it was daily. Morning airing cleared nighttime moisture. Midday airing refreshed living spaces. Bedding was turned back. Curtains were opened. Firewood was brought in dry. Wet clothes were dried near heat, but not overnight, without ventilation. This routine prevented cumulative dampness. Mold requires time and moisture. By never allowing moisture to linger, grandparents broke the cycle before it began. Today, you know, it's a good idea to adopt fixed ventilation habits. Vent at the same times each day, no matter what the weather is doing outside. Pay attention to condensation on your windows. If you spot it, well, moisture levels are already too high. For anyone dealing with high heating bills, respiratory irritation, or even mold during the winter months, this historical rule is immediately applicable. It doesn't require any technology, no extra expense, and when done properly, you don't have to compromise on warmth. Short, intentional cold air ventilation dries out homes, protects your lungs, preserves the structure, and helps reduce energy demand. It worked before electricity, and honestly, it still works today. If this kind of grounded, time-tested knowledge matters to you, do consider subscribing to Warfield Prepper Chronicles, give this video a like, and share it with others who are preparing for winter the old way. These rules have survived for centuries because they worked, and you know what? They still do.